So family and social support is really important. And there's a couple things. It's important because friends and family, they know you the best. And that's where most people, or many people, get their support from. Sometimes people feel that they are too close to the issue, and so they try to protect the ones that are closest to them. And sometimes they feel like they need to depend on their social supports. So there's really no right answer, but it's important to sort of think about how to navigate with your support system so that they can help you the way you want to be helped, and that matters. It's not always obvious, right? Sometimes you want to tell everything to people, and sometimes you don't want to burden them. Sometimes you need their support, and sometimes you don't want to give up the control of being in charge of your own life. So it can work either way. And then we also want to talk a little bit about online supports and other very sort of community-based supports, because there's a variety of support offerings in the community. But we do want to say, just as one kind of general caveat, is that if you do go online, or when you go online, just be careful about where you get your information, because the internet has the best and the worst of the information that you need. So pay attention to that when we get to that section on online resources. But first, family relationships. So it's true that cancer affects the whole family, not just the person who has the cancer. And so it's important to make sure that there are times and places to give and get support from each other, and not just assume, well, he or she will know what I want, or they know what I need, because we've been married a long time. It's always good to sort of take some time to make sure you have that. Sometimes it's best if the support is kept within the family. And there are lots of families that are very close-knit, and people feel very safe and very, very loved and cared for within the family. There are other times when the patient wants to get the support somewhere else. They don't want to burden the family. They don't want to feel like it's just, I don't know, too close to home, I guess. So the most important part is to recognize that there are supports available to you. And again, as we've said in prior episodes, it's important to get the support you need the way you need it, when you need it. We'll talk a little bit about the resource section next for family and patient support groups. So in terms of marriage, if you're married, if you're not married, it's okay. If you have a significant other, this works just as well. But important is that it can interfere with your normal primary relationship. And not because of any good thing or bad, or not for any wrong reason, but just because it's a big issue that's going on in your life. So one of the things that we recommend is that you just make sure you take time and you set aside time to talk just as a couple when you're not exhausted and when you're not under a lot of stress. And you may think, well, when's that going to be? Well, it turns out that as you get used to the routine, that there are times when you feel more quiet. There are times when you feel like right now there's not a crisis or an issue going on, and I can talk about it. What happens sometimes is that when you have your primary person to talk to, normally under a stressful situation, that's the person you'd go to, right? That's the person you would talk to. And when in this kind of situation, sometimes that feels hard because the thing you want to talk about is the cancer that's going on in the person who has the disorder or the disease. So try to have those conversations when you're not at the end of the day, when you haven't just had an appointment, or when you're just about to get results from a scan or a blood test. Those are the times when your mind is going to be the most distracted by the other issues, and it's not a great time to talk about issues that are important with your couple. It's important to feel close and to find ways to be close, physically, mentally, emotionally, even if the usual routine of intimacy doesn't feel right, or the right thing to do, or the right time. Still, taking time, and not to be glib about it, but long walks on the beach or watching TV together or something, that matters, even if the usual levels of intimacy may not apply. It's also important to be clear about what you do want and what you don't want from your partner. Again, for people who have been together for a long time, there's oftentimes this assumption that he or she is going to know what I want. And the fact is, the rules of the game change when you're in cancer treatment because there's so many other things going on. So it's okay to say, that's really helpful or that's not helpful. And also, especially for the caregiver, it's important not to make assumptions about what the other person's thinking. It's oftentimes tempting to think, well, she probably doesn't want me to talk about it, so I won't talk about it. Or he doesn't like to talk about those things, so maybe we shouldn't talk about it. Sometimes it's just helpful to ask, hey, do you want to talk about this? Or is there anything you need me to know? Or any of those things. So although this is true for all couples for all reasons, it's especially true during cancer treatment. If you have young children, it's an important thing. And because cancer strikes at different ages, it's important to know that there are some of you who have young kids to take care of. And as you know, parenting never takes a vacation, right? So it's important to know that there are ways to talk to your kids and help them understand what you're going through that won't overwhelm them and help them be engaged in the process. We have a program called Parenting at a Challenging Time, also known as PACT. And we have two excellent child psychiatrists who work on giving good advice about how to talk to kids anywhere from college age down to elementary school or younger. And they have lots of good resources to help you navigate that process. But just to summarize some of the things that they talk about when they do consults with young families, is they say you want to call the cancer, not some boo-boo or some other thing that may be kind of confusing to the children who know other people get boo-boos and other kinds of illnesses. So naming it allows them to know what we're talking about. It's okay to be direct with your children so that they hear it from you and it's not overheard in some whispered background conversation. They like to get the straight scoop from their parents. It's good to welcome questions warmly and encourage their interest. Sometimes it'll be about specific things like, why do you have that tube, or why do you have that bandage on your chest? And other times it's more abstract concepts. It kind of depends on the age. It's also important to ask some clarifying questions to get at what the real concerns are. They're asking about vacation time or whether you're going to be around when they're home from school. And maybe that's about whether you're going to be home when they're home from school, and other times it may be just about some worry. So it's good to ask what they're asking. It's also okay to respect their wish not to talk or only to get information in small doses. Kids are pretty smart about knowing what they can tolerate and what they can't, and so it's okay to trust them. If they don't want to talk about it, that's sometimes okay. But don't let them worry alone. Let them know that you understand that they may be worried and that you're worried too, and it's okay. You're going to get through it together. It's also important to make sure that other key caretakers are aware of the situation so they can support the children as well. Obviously, daycare or teachers or coaches, friends who also have kids the same age. It's helpful to know so that they can support the kids, or they can be on the lookout in case your child is feeling sad or kind of disconnected. All kids care about what happens, and many don't have the words to know what to say, and sometimes nonverbal activities can work well also. Sometimes having a family coloring time or going for walks together and picking up leaves and all sorts of stuff, that sometimes is a useful way to get the communication flowing. In addition, like I said before, helping caretakers, other care people in their life, family members who may be doing daycare or picking up after school, those are all good people to keep in the loop about how things are going on a kind of a day-to-day basis with the kids. It is important to carve out family time and make sure that that kind of stays as normal, maintaining the kids' normal schedule. If they have to go to ballet or dance recitals or music lessons, it's good to be able to keep that stuff going. It helps them feel like you're handling it. And if you have to have time in the hospital, it's okay to have visits and to have them see what's happening. But it's also good to do that in small doses. because sometimes they can't, or they don't really want to see much more than just knowing what it looks like. And another key element is just knowing it's important to take care of yourself while you're going through this. And that's good parenting advice in general, right? But it's also true, and especially true during cancer treatment. I've just gone over these things really briefly. Our PACT, P-A-C-T, Parenting at a Challenging Time consultants are really gifted, and they can help you think through much more specific questions or much more specific situations. So don't just take my word for it. Ask for a consult. With adult children, sometimes they're the primary caretakers, and cancer diagnosis can sometimes be a challenge to their schedule as well as yours. And so we have a social worker and myself, the psychologist, who are helpful and available to clarify how you want the adult children to be involved in your care to the extent that you do. If they're distant, if they don't live in state and they can't get here all the time, there are ways to include them in the process. And it's important for us to kind of know what their needs are as well as what your needs are from them. If you have children who are distant or you have children who are actively involved, it's important to let them know what you do need and want from them. And it's also okay to tell them what you don't need and want from them. Again, clarity in terms of the conversation can really be very useful. And as you may have remembered from earlier episodes, talking about goals of care is really important. And your adult children are going to want to be involved in that process to some extent. And so helping us figure out how to involve them and how to help them advocate for you can be a really useful adjunct to your care and help to your care. So I talked earlier about online supports. And as I said before, the internet is full of the best information ever and the worst ever. It's the online stuff where you hear that someone with your type of diagnosis was cured by drinking only orange juice for 16 weeks. And that's probably not true, but it seems true when you see it on the internet. So these websites, cancer.gov, cancer.org, cancer.net, or the community support, cancer support community, or cancer care, or patientadvocate.org, are all national organizations that have really high quality information that's vetted by professionals. The cancer support community especially has a lot of good resources for people who are going through it, both for the caregiver and the patient. FacingCancerTogether.org on the bottom is another great resource, and that's actually local here in Boston. And they have a lot of support groups for caregivers and patients that are both about talking and sometimes about journaling or doing painting or other things that are useful ways of processing and thinking about what you're going through with people who are aware of the process and help you sort of realize you're not alone in this. So the top ones, provided by the National Cancer Institute or the American Cancer Society or the American Society for Clinical Oncology, those are all great resources for information about treatments, but also patient support organizations and group supports. And a lot of these have local chapters that you can tap into. So if you're going to go online, or when you go online, we recommend you go to these places first to get real and clarified and critically reviewed information. So personal supports. This is not just your family. It does apply to your family and the extended family, but also people you know in your community, like people at work or people you bump into in your religious institution or the grocery store. And what's true is that most people give you what they think would be supportive to them. So that's what they give. And it turns out that sometimes they're right, and it really is supportive to you. And other times it's really not. And so helping them understand what is and what is not supportive to you is really important. So what I recommend is tell people two things. One is, here's a list of things that are helpful to me, and list what those are. And then also at the same time, or right after that, tell them, on the other hand, these are the things that are not helpful to me, and give a list of whatever those things are. The thing is, if you only tell people what is helpful to you, they're going to want to do more of it. And they're going to tell their friends and your mutual friends that you want more of that. And that turns out to be the source of why sometimes when you say, you know what, it'd be great if someone could cook a meal for me, next couple of days you end up having 10 green bean casseroles and 15 lasagnas. Nothing wrong with green bean casserole, totally for it, but 10 of them, that's a bit much. On the other hand, if you just say what you don't want people to do, well, then you kind of come across as being negative. Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me about my doctor. Don't tell me this. And although that's true, if you only say that, people will give you a lot of feedback about you not having a good attitude. And you are having a good attitude. It's just you need to be in control. So when you give both things together, it kind of helps people aim their good intentions in the right way. So for example, if you're in the grocery store and the person you haven't seen in 6 months comes up to you and says, oh my gosh, I heard that you had cancer, and my brother-in-law's third cousin, he went to this doctor in Thailand and he's cured. It's okay to say to them, you know what? It's nice to see you, and it's really great that you want to support me and give me advice about how to get through this, but I got to be honest with you. When you give me stuff like that off the internet, it really isn't helpful to me. My doctor told me I should only get advice from my doctors about what the treatment plan is. So although I appreciate your support, I got to tell you, I don't want to hear about the guy in Thailand. Thanks, though. That takes some practice. If you do have specific needs or wants, it's okay to ask for that specific help. There are some people who are going to be really good at practical supports, like giving you rides to appointments or cooking a meal or mowing your lawn or raking your leaves or whatever. And there are going to be other people that are really good at emotional support, like they're a good shoulder to cry on. You can vent to them and just, spew whatever feelings are coming. They're also good to go play hooky with and go to a movie with and forget about the whole thing after, for a moment. The people who are really good with practical support may not be good with touchy-feely feelings and may not want to talk about it. The people who are good shoulders to cry on may totally forget that you had an appointment and not show up and not give you a ride. So if you know what people are good at, ask them for what they're good at. And don't worry about what they're not good at. There may be somebody else who can help you with that part. And then you may be surprised that the people you thought would be there to help you may not show up. Turns out that having cancer is a challenging thing for people who have it, for sure, and then for other people who hear about it. So it may be that the people you thought would be there, be it extended family or friends, just find out they're too busy or they can't ever quite make it over. Whereas other people who you may only know peripherally, they may really step up because of something in their own experience or just because it turns out they're better people than anyone gave them credit for. So my advice is people will give what they can and they won't give what they can't. Make use of the supports that do step up and don't worry about the ones that don't. In terms of work, if you're still working, this is often an issue in terms of how to navigate work and how to navigate how much you're going to be able to work and all those kind of things. So first, when you do your chemo teach and when you talk with your doctors and your nurses, get as much a clear sense of what to expect about when your energy level is going to kind of peter out or what to expect over the long run. And then once you know that, it's okay to just tell the people at work who need to know what you're going through. That is to say, your direct reports, the people, your boss, or the close colleagues that depend on you to produce some part of the endeavor. Mostly that's just so you don't let them down, right? And so that they know what to expect in terms of adjusting your work schedule or whatever. But the thing is, if you tell everybody, then you're going to have to keep telling the story over and over again each time there's a change, or if you get things get better, or you have a challenge, or there's some complication. It's just as complicated to have to tell everybody all over again. So if you just tell the people who are directly in the know or directly need to know, then it kind of keeps it tighter and it keeps it more within your reach, within your control. And it's okay to tell your boss, I'm telling you this, but I don't want to tell anybody else about it yet, so please don't spread the word. Over time, you can tell more people as you feel comfortable. Part of it's just you're going to get a better sense of what it feels like. You're going to know what to expect, and you're going to know, hey, listen, on the 4th day of treatment cycle, I'm just done. I can't do anything, so don't call me. But on the 10th day, I'm great. I'm back I'll be back. I'll be doing work. You can call me anytime. In the beginning, also, it can sometimes help to talk about what you're going to need with your human resources staff. There is a lot of paperwork sometimes that has to get filled out around short-term disability or leaves of absence or all that kind of stuff. And your human resources professionals are the ones who kind of help navigate that for whatever your job is. Also here, we'll talk about her in another episode, but recognizing our social worker here at the Cancer Center is really good at helping people think through all the paperwork. It can sometimes feel kind of overwhelming. So if you bring your paperwork in, we can help you go through it and point out, like, the doctor has to fill in this form and we can fill in that form, and this you want to bring to your primary care doc or whatever. So if the paperwork seems overwhelming, it's kind of because it is, but you're not alone in that. And our social worker here is really great at helping people do that. So in addition, whether you're at work or you're in the community, it sometimes helps to have an elevator speech that you can practice ahead of time to help you frame how you're going to manage this. And so one of the things is, so an elevator speech, the idea of it is that you have a sort of a concise and a direct way to say what's happening and how much you want to talk about it, and how much you don't want to talk about it. So for example, like if people say, oh my gosh, I heard you had cancer, you can say, yeah, they told me I got cancer, but right now, all I want to focus on is getting to my treatments and getting better every day. If you can help me do that, that would be great. And that's an example of a short, pithy little thing you can say that'll help you communicate in a way that makes it just less mental and emotional effort to talk to people about it.